Hey everyone, this is Bruce Collins from the channel Bruce Collins Reacts and Stuff. And I also have another channel called the Bruce Collins Show YouTube channel. I hope you like them both. I hope you subscribe here to Bruce Collins Reacts and Stuff and also my other channel. And a lot of great content on both channels. Now today we're going to look at the 10 creepiest Mandela effect mysteries ever that will creep you out. Again, it's from the channel Top 10 Unknowns. Let's take a look. Okay, here we go.
Time and time again, we're met with examples of misremembering, or perhaps government-altered realities. Some of these examples can be quite strange and come as a shock to most. Number 10. Edward Peter McMahon Jr., or Ed McMahon for short, was an American comedian, announcer, and game show host. Ed was famous for his appearance on The Tonight Show from 1962 to 1992, and he'd also hosted Star Search from 83 to 95. The announcer co-hosted as well on TV's Bloopers and Practical Jokes from 82 to 86. He's also known for his various other appearances on game shows and hosting alongside other announcers. A discussion ensued on the Mandela Effect subreddit after Terrible You 2833 had made a post stating that she and her husband had their minds blown when he had asked her what she had known about Ed McMahon, aside from Star Search. She responded immediately with Publisher Clearinghouse, a marketing company that would sell merchandise and magazine subscriptions that was founded in 1953. The husband had also seemed to remember that Ed was associated with Publishers Clearinghouse, but they soon discovered that it was just part of a Mandela effect. One user was stumped, stating that they were...
Yeah, he was actually part of, I think it was called American Family. But in years past, I did also think he was Publishers Clearinghouse.
...called that Ed was in fact a spokesperson for the company. Her grandmother had received the small magazines so often that she'd been trying to leave the users...
I think the confusion is they both would send all of us tons of mail every month saying we were, apparently a winner in their contest.
...grandfather for Ed. In fact, the announcer had worked for a different company that was called American Family Publishing, and perhaps people were confusing the two due to the last word of the title. Another user, IC Function 9323, recalls the commercials where the host would be holding the large checks with some balloons and would go to a random door and ring the bell. The winners at the end of the commercial would always thank Publishers Clearinghouse. But there's no evidence aside from the memories of viewers that suggest that the man had ever been a part of or worked for this company. American Family Publishing and PCH had regularly been mistaken for each other, which is possibly another cause of the false memory. Those who knew of these companies and Ed McMahon are convinced that the host would stand next to the winners holding these checks with big smiles painted on their faces. Heated debates ensued in the comments section of Terrible You's post. Many recalled that the company involved had been PCH and not AFP, while others recall that he never worked for PCH and there's no evidence to state that he did. It was found that Ed had in fact handed out checks on one of the shows that he was involved in, but it had never been Publishers Clearinghouse, as most would remember it. This particular Mandela effect was said to be the act of mistaking the two companies for one another, as it so often would happen. WV Prepper, another user, stated that the two companies were similar, and Cold Blue Lights, another commenter, asked the user to show him the Ed commercials, which she linked. Cold Blue Lights didn't recall seeing these commercials. Prepper would then ask how the user thought that anyone was able to redo various commercials to convince the masses that Ed never worked for PCH. Cold Blue Lights explained further that he didn't believe that anything had been faked, but rather altered. This is the common belief amongst those who've experienced the Mandela effect. It's been accredited to time shifts or entering new realities, and sometimes government interference. The phenomenon is so incredibly strange and enigmatic that we may never know what causes it. While guesses can be made for some and obvious answers can be found for others, there are a few that are just simply creepy, with no apparent explanation.
And to put a period on that, I think American Family is out of business now. And so the only one remaining is Publishers Clearinghouse, which also probably gives people a little confusion. But Publishers Clearinghouse also is a shell of a company of what it used to be. There was a gentleman who worked for Publishers Clearinghouse recently in the last couple of years that wrote a document or a tell-all book about his life in Publishers Clearinghouse, and it was really a circus behind the scenes. Another thing that kept Publishers Clearinghouse alive for so long is they came up with this word to put on all the envelopes. You are a finalist. And they sent that out to everybody. And do you know their sales skyrocketed because everybody thought they were a finalist for the main prize? And they couldn't get in trouble for that because what is a finalist? How do you define that legally? It was a great yet deceptive way to market their product.
Number 9. Casablanca refers to an American drama film that had been released in 1942. It had been loosely based upon an unproduced play by Murray Burnett and Joanne Allison called Everybody Comes to Rick's. The film was an emotionally charged romance that was set during the time of World War II. It is said to be an iconic motion picture and one of the most celebrated in history. The movie is set in Casablanca, where many Europeans had become stranded after seeking refuge from the war. It was found in this movie that a famous line is often quoted. For an unknown reason, most people remember that the broken-hearted Rick says, "Play it again, Sam," to his musician friend, after Sam had just gone into a rendition of Time Goes By. It may come as a shock that this famous and often quoted line never existed, and we've somehow convinced ourselves otherwise as time has gone on. It's this catchphrase that was often cited by the generation that had seen the original film in the cinema. But it's this phrase that was not said in the original film, nor in any movie that Humphrey Bogart had starred in thereafter.
Bogart.
The closest lines to the misremembered quote have been, quote, "Play it once, Sam, for old time's sake," which is followed by "Play it, Sam," but this is said by Bergman and not Bogart's character. The actual line that his character utters is, "You played it for her, you can play it for me," followed by "Play it." In 1972, there had been a Broadway play and a popular film with Woody Allen and Diane Keaton that used the misremembered quote as a title. When it was released, there was a realization that it had been a misquote, which many were unaware of at the time. It could be that it was this play and movie that was responsible for the false memory, but for many, the memory is quite real. It was this example that also found its way onto the Mandela effect subreddit, where some individuals knew that it had been a misquoted line from years back, whereas others quoted the line believing that it was the correct one. This example has featured on almost every one of the Mandela effect lists. While it can be accredited to one misquote from a famous movie, it certainly sparked unease in the community. Number 8. In 1975, one of the most popular movies ever was released. It was the American horror film directed by Steven Spielberg, Jaws, which centered around a rogue shark. It had been based upon a 1974 novel that had the same name, written by Peter Benchley. The movie had not only broken box office records, but it also changed the way in which Hollywood had marketed and distributed movies. It's in this film that a famous line is uttered by Roy Schneider, and it's become the subject of a Mandela effect. It's at the point in the film where Schneider is throwing bait into the water. While he's distracted, the shark pops up behind him, causing the character to back away. Schneider then says to another character, "We're going to need a bigger boat." At least, this is how fans and viewers remembered it. It's this line that's been subject to false memories or the altering of history. Schneider's character actually yelled, "You're going to need..."
I'm pretty sure it's Scheider, not Schneider, but that could be another Mandela effect for me.
A bigger boat with a cigarette dangling from his mouth. This was noted by Jay Krista 8 years ago, who asked the Reddit community what the first word of the quote was and proceeded to say that it apparently was not "we're." The user had come across this Mandela effect on YouTube under a username Same Feet, who had a history with the movie and the film. It's Same Feet who also remembers and believes that the word was "we're." Jay Krista linked a clip from Jaws and told the viewers to note the title, which read, "We're gonna need a bigger boat." This clip had been viewed over 100,000 times. It was also found that there had been a lack of commenters stating that the title was wrong. After further research, the Redditor found that other clips had their video titled as "You're gonna need a bigger boat." When the user had heard about movie lines changing, he'd read through a few different lists of misquoted lines and never recalled this being one of them. It is possible that he'd skipped over this entry, or it had only been altered around that time. A Redditor commented on this post stating that they were not a fan of this movie, but also distinctly remember the line using the words "we're" and not "you're." Troy Cheek, another user, explained that they too were certain that it was "we're," and that he'd recorded the movie on his DVR and watched it a couple nights prior. He then proceeded to pull it up, and sure enough, the "we're" had been changed to "you're," but also noted that the closed captions, though, had said "we're." Stepfather had been a huge fan of this movie and played it on a regular basis. The line, as he remembered it, was always, "We're gonna need a bigger boat," and he never recalled the altered version. The comments appear to be split, where some remembered that the movie did use the word "you're," and others believe it was simply an altered memory. Additionally, the first Sharknado movie had parodied the misremembered version of the line, "We're gonna need a bigger chipper," which can be found 57 seconds into the movie trailer. The line is also parodied in the movie Clerks. If one were to search "We're Gonna Need" on YouTube, various videos of the misquoted title pop up. Our favorite movie lines, books, titles, song lyrics, and logos are in the process of being subjected to minor alterations, or perhaps the psychology behind false memory is more accurate and prevalent than we may have thought. Number 7. I Love Lucy was an American sitcom that aired from 1951 to 1957 on CBS. It was a popular TV show in America for 4.
I've actually done this particular one in a previous video, so I'm going to skip over this. If you want to see this particular Mandela effect, please check out my other videos on Mandela effects.
Number 6. Joan Jett is said to be one of the greatest rock singers of her time. The American singer is also a guitarist, songwriter, record producer, and an actress. She's well known for her work in Joan Jett and the Black Hearts. Joan is one of the founders of the Runaways, a punk rock band. In 2015, her band was added into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Some of her most famous songs include "I Love Rock and Roll," "Bad Reputation," "I Hate Myself for Loving You," and "Crimson and Clover." It's one of these famous songs that's been the subject of a strange Mandela effect. A user named Chuckster85 took to the Mandela Effect subreddit when they discovered that one of the lyrics in "I Love Rock and Roll" had been altered. They explained that the lyric, "I saw him standing there by the record machine," now read, "I saw him dancing there by the record machine." Chuckster expressed that he went to look for various different clips of the song, but all of them now used the word "dancing" instead of "standing." They had no doubt that the version they grew up with had said "standing," and had even listened to it 2 years prior to the lyric change. It was furthered that various covers used the word "standing," but the Joan Jett version all used "dancing." Other Redditors seemed to agree with this poster. Justin Time Warp stated that it had always been "standing," and that he would sing the song over and over. The song had originally been sung by the Arrows, in which they would use the word "dancing," but many remember that Joan Jett's version used "standing" instead. Justin Time Warp also stated that when men had sung the song, it was "dancing," and when Joanne had sung the song, it would be altered to fit with the gender change. Chuckster stated that he had asked Joanne on Twitter about the lyric she remembered, but has yet to receive a response. Andy C333 also clearly remembers the word "standing," and said this confirms that we're in an alternate reality. Peachy1991 commented the following, saying, quote, "I remember standing. Dancing by the record machine sounds lame and doesn't even work." Another viewer also recalled belting out "standing" at the top of their lungs. There are a few famous songs such as this one that have been added to the mystery of the Mandela effect. Some argue that our history is being changed right before our eyes. Number 5. In the book of Judges, chapter 16 in the Bible, we find the story of Samson and Delilah. Samson was a legendary warrior and judge of great strength, and a member of the tribe of Dan. His physical strength, which he'd used against the Philistines for 20 years, had come from his uncut hair. Delilah had been a Philistine who'd been the last love story of Samson. She would bribe and entrap the great warrior and learn the secret of his strength, of which she would later use against him. In the Bible, it reads that the rulers of the Philistines had gone to Delilah and instructed her to lure him in and find out what the secret to his strength had been. Delilah would then go on to ask Samson what the secrets of his strengths were, and how he could be tied up. Each answer that he gave had been proven false when the Philistines had attacked. It was only until Delilah had said, "How can you say I love you when you do not confide in me?" Each day, the warrior was prodded for his secrets until he grew tired and finally told her how it could be done. He expressed that his strength lay in his uncut hair and that no razor had been used upon his head. He stated that if his head were to be shaved, his strength would dwindle. It's at this point that Delilah had called for the Philistines once more, after having let Samson fall asleep on her lap. Many believe that this is the part where she cut off the braids that held the strength of the warrior. But faulty memory proves this to be false. Delilah had not been the one to rid the man of his hair, but had rather called for someone else to do it. A man had shaved off all 7 of Samson's braids. This had shocked a deleted Reddit user, who brought it into the community's attention in the subreddit for Mandela effects. One user also recalls that it had been Delilah who had done the act herself and quoted a line from the song Samson by Regina Spektor, which read, "Oh, I cut his hair off myself one night, a pair of dull scissors in the yellow light." Another individual recounted the old Samson and Delilah song, which stated, "She spoke so kind, she talked so fair, while Samson said, Delilah cut off my hair." The commenters seemed to be in agreement that they recalled that this was the woman who'd performed the act of ridding Samson of his strength. Luckily, there was some residual evidence for this strange supposed Mandela effect. A user named Transformati listed various links in their comment of old classical paintings that each depict Delilah cutting Samson's hair. This included the 1537 painting titled Samson and Delilah, which resides in Germany. The image depicts the great warrior asleep on the lap of the fair woman, who's seen cutting his hair with a pair of scissors. In another painting, a similar depiction can be seen where Samson lies on top of the woman only to have his hair cut by her. Various songs and paintings, and possibly plays throughout history, do seem to depict that it was she who committed the act. Yet the community is being led to believe that Delilah had gotten someone else to cut the hair of the warrior. There is a large pushback against this story, as many believe to have been different. After many have gone through a few different versions of the Bible, they found no story that states that it was Delilah, but rather another man, which has sparked debate and confusion on multiple social media platforms.
All right, there you have it. The name of the video is 10 Creepiest Mandela Effects Mysteries Ever That Will Creep You Out. And it's, again, from the YouTube channel Top 5 Unknowns. And we learned a lot today about Joan Jett and Roy Schneider. I thought that was interesting. Anyway, what Mandela effects creep you out? Comment below. I would be happy to read your responses. In the meantime, I hope you have a great day. Take care. I'll see you soon.